Oh, all right. So, James, slightly different format for the Mastermind weekly now.
All
Um,
right.
so what we do is we just jump in and we do a win and a challenge, 3 minutes kind of on the clock for people, and then we dig into a bit of a topic for the rest of the session just to get a little bit more value going. So I'll kind of, I'm not going to put you on the spot first. So I'm going to come to Marco first,
Thank
and
you.
then we'll see. You're welcome. We'll see what the win and the challenge is. So, Mark, you remember James, didn't you? You remember James from previously Accelerating?
Yes.
Good.
I'm
Good.
good.
We all know each other. That's a win. So, Marco, what's the win and challenge, man? How's the week been?
Oh, it's been pretty good. The win, I guess, is we're getting regular blog posts put up, so that's good. We have like 6 of them in the queue, and I think 2 posted. Have been putting them up on Monday nights, and so I have another one for tonight.
Nice.
So that's been good. Got a couple comments to one we did last week, which was people just saying they thought it was a good post and was right on with issues that they've had. So I guess what Louisa's writing right now is hitting home with some people, but still not a lot of I guess uptake as far as reading and especially any of the downloads that we have associated with them. But
Okay.
It's good to see people are at least reading and reacting a little bit, so getting some interaction. And I've been focusing on trying to on social media with people who do reply or share or retweet or whatever, and going in and commenting back to them and finding things either in their posts or people that follow them's posts that we can comment on.
Okay.
Or if there's anything interesting to share them or retweet them. So I think it's slowly making some traction.
Good, man. That's really good. And it is a constant battle, that, going in. That's something that you never stop doing, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think certainly with Twitter as well, getting the attention on things like Twitter is definitely, seems to be a less is more thing at the minute. More is seems to be worse. If you're just constantly hammering content and pushing it out, people just aren't picking it up. But if you're kind of well placed, having decent conversations with people, it seems to be working and engaging. Interestingly as well, I kind of want to just, before we go into something a bit deeper, I want to circle back to something that we talked about months and months ago for you, which was your LinkedIn following. Because it's a pertinent thing to bring up, I think. How's that going? What are you doing much on LinkedIn? Is there anything going through? Because you've got that really strong audience on LinkedIn. Did you ever link the two niches together at all?
Not really. I did a couple posts. I'm actually working on some additional things to try to do a crossover on those two. It's kind of hard because I don't know. It's I'm not sure how to judge the interest level on the LinkedIn besides just putting up some things and seeing what kind of traction they get. So
okay,
trying to figure out what's going to work best.
Okay, I would just start asking a few questions on there. Personally, I think this is a good LinkedIn strategy as well for you, Rick, and for you, James, as well. To be fair, I think it's a good strategy for anyone. Is just going out there and asking a few well-placed questions. So, like Marco, you want to bridge the gap in the niches, from your engineering side of things to this kind of parenting side of things. I would just be trying to gauge the audience that is already there. What is going on with that audience? Like, are they having these issues that you're having? Like, what parenting aspects are people dealing with from within your other audience? Who can you migrate over? It's like that Venn diagram, what's the bit in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think could be quite interesting. LinkedIn's getting a lot of love at the minute, which is kind of fucking weird, because like a year ago, everyone hated the thing. And it seems to be doing all right now, which is really, really weird. But I think leaning into that a little bit is going to be quite interesting for you. And also on the flip side of that, like, what's Louisa doing on there? That's one of the challenges I see it from your side, is getting Louisa to be seen as that professional expert, in that field. I know you've got the doctor links and so on. But
on LinkedIn, you mean?
Yeah. How can Louisa be positioned?
We've kind of gone through. I haven't had time to actually set up a profile for her because she never had one on LinkedIn. But we kind of want to set one up with the, I guess, the focus of her engineering background and what she's done technically and how she's kind of migrated into this role of the engineering parenting solutions, right? So we want to set up one for her with and try to get some of her ex-colleagues and stuff. She doesn't have any following on LinkedIn right now, so we have to kind of build that from scratch. But she's got pretty good Facebook ones, so I think we can maybe get some of those people over and stuff. So we want to do that, and that will be a better avenue, I think, for cross-posting some of these things, because if her profile is focused on that aspect, then it makes more sense to post blogs and things there and questions and things in the LinkedIn for her than for me. But
well, I kind of want to, I'm going to dig into this topic a little bit. I'm going to kind of continue the thread. So James, just to bring you up to date, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about kind of this content repurposing idea a little bit. We've kind of been digging into that a little bit. So I'm going to continue that thread on just a touch today. And we'll kind of thread that in as well, Marco. Then we'll look at how we can do that on the LinkedIn side of things. So I'm going to stick a pin in it for now, from that side of things, and we'll come back to that. So I'm going to just jump over to you, Rick. What's been happening, man? You've had a good, strong week. You were kind of you were on top of the world last week, which was amazing to see. I thought that was really good to chat about that. So tell us a little bit what's been going on. Are you feeling good? Feeling confident?
Yeah, feeling pretty good. I think things have definitely settled in. Did my 2 hour, well, to bring everybody else up to speed, Mark and I had a really good session about really breaking things down even further on my business and where I play and who I'm going to work with, and I think it was probably the best clarity we've had in a while. So things are moving forward in that arena. And then Friday I had a 2 hour intensive with Josh Elledge about my influence, which went pretty good. We'll see where it goes once I get the report. But Josh does a lot of teaching people how to get PR and things like that. And I've been thinking about playing in his arena for a while, and finally took the leap because of his new program where he does a deep dive intensive and then gives you a report of here's all the recommendations, here's things we think you need to be doing, so on and so forth, and then he a la cartes it out depending on what you want to do. So
did he sorry to just jump in there, Rick, did he get it? I know that's a very broad question, but did he get this?
Yes. Yeah, he does. Yeah, he totally gets it. So yeah, he actually was pretty much aligned with where we are as far as how to target and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'll send you some messages later about some things he brought up so that you and I can throw those around. But nothing big, actually. He pretty much felt like everything was aligned. But interesting that you bring up the LinkedIn, because his 2 places where he focuses most of his effort are LinkedIn and Twitter. So as far as making connections and getting things done. So especially he seems to be playing the LinkedIn place community a lot as well. So yeah, things are good. Just about done with the first big blog post that you and I talked about. I've got maybe 1 or 2 sections left to finish writing, then I'll throw that over to you. So
good, buddy. Well played. What's the challenge then? What you're struggling with? Anything? Are we on top of it?
No, I don't. No real challenge. I mean, I just actually the other thing I did was I signed up with a regional, well, it's National Association of, right here, National Association of Campus Activities, and I only did their regional group, but ended up getting probably 700, 800 contacts in most of the Western region states. So going to put them into the database in a separate way from everybody else, and going to try just using Loom as an outreach with me on video to every one of those people to talk about coming to campus. So it's good though, because it's a solid list, because people who are on the list have to be members of this organization too. So the schools actually have to pay to be members as well. So you've got the schools being members, you've got people like me. The negative that I've heard from other people in this arena is you're competing with singers, comedians, all that sort of stuff, but there's not as many speakers in the group. So if you're a speaker, and especially if you come in a very targeted space, you tend to get noticed more. So we'll see. And it was only like a couple $100 to become a member. So that's where we're going to go play. So.
Good. Sounds good. Well done. And I think we'll tie all this together as well in a little while. Yep. So yeah, well played on that, dude. Yeah, drop us through the update on Josh, and we'll chat about that one then. Cool, man. All right, James, I'm going to come to you, my man. Now, I'm not going to throw you on with a win in a challenge. I'm just going to kind of ask for an update, actually, like what's been happening since the last time we worked together, what was happening since the last time you were on the Mastermind. Give us a kind of update on what's been happening with Musicpreneur and everything else. What's been going down, my man?
Well, it's been over a year since I had to cease operations with you, Mark and Rick and Marco and everybody. I've just been kind of wandering like a lonely vagabond, finding my way in the world, lost without your direction and your guidance. First of all, let me say a quick testimonial on LinkedIn. My wife and I are moving from North Carolina to Virginia, and my wife didn't work for 8 years, and she found a job. I mean, she literally found a job within 2 or 3 weeks on LinkedIn. It's a great job, and she's really excited about it. And she like hooked up with some sort of headhunter of some kind, and like she hadn't interviewed for a job in 10 years, and thanks to LinkedIn, she got this great job. She's really excited about it. So
Nice.
yeah, so LinkedIn definitely works. Personal testimonial. So to talk about what has happened with Musicpreneur is, wow, a lot has happened. It's now 5 days a week podcast. The format that I've sort of settled on is 2 interviews per week, which is Tuesday and Thursday. And then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is me sort of doing an audio blog. I really wanted to establish myself as like an authority in the niche of music entrepreneurship. Big weakness that I realized that I had with my approach with it was I relied too heavily on the authority of the guests. Like I would say, yeah, I've got such and such a big name on my podcast, and this is why you should listen to it. And I realized just listening to other people, kind of masterminds here and there, that I was really doing myself as well as the guests of the podcast a disservice by not establishing myself as an authority. So that's been just a big push on my end, is just establish James Newcomb is someone that you want to listen to as a musician who wants to be an entrepreneur. Since I left you guys last time, I stopped a podcast that I had called Trumpet Dynamics. It was very focused on that trumpet niche. And since I was so focused on Musicpreneur, the website, the podcast and the website and everything, I just sort of realized that Trumpet Dynamics wasn't really, like, what I was doing with it was just kind of talking shop with other trumpet players. And it just wasn't really doing anything for me. So I quit that and focused primarily on Musicpreneur. But I realized, man, there's, why, if you have this brand that I've already established, why would I not tap into that and take the message of Musicpreneur and take it to like that specific niche of trumpet players, of which I am. And so sort of resurrected Trumpet Dynamics. And I don't know do we have time for a story about this?
Yeah, quick one, yeah.
Okay. Basically, we went through a serious trial by fire. I took on a couple of partners to grow this Trumpet Dynamics brand. And we had a little bit of controversy. I had a female trumpet player on the podcast. And long story short, I got labeled in the trumpet community as a big-time sexist. Like, just things that were taken way out of context. I was labeled as a misogynist, a sexist. It was, I mean, I could go into more detail, but it was ugly. The guy, one of the people that I had taken on as sort of a quasi-business partner, totally jumped ship and threw me under the bus in front of pretty heavy hitters in the trumpet niche.
Shit, man.
It was crazy. And I guess I can tell you more about it when we have more time. But the good thing that came out of it is that the other person that I had taken on as a partner, she's a female. And it's a rarity to be a trumpet player and a female. And she like stuck through it through the end. She saw all of the mud that was slinging and all of the craziness that was said about me. And she was like, I'm right with you, dude. So the good thing and the silver lining was that I got a really solid business partner out of it. And she and I are going to be working closely together on this musicpreneur brand, and she's going to be focused specifically on that trumpet niche through the trumpet dynamics. So that's about as much as I can think of in 3 minutes or less with what's going on with me.
Wow. Okay, well, we'll dig into that. That's interesting then. So one thing I'm gonna just ask you then, just to bolt onto it, what's the challenge? Like, what's the number one challenge? Why did you come back to the group? What's the challenge? Where are we going with this thing? Just to kind of bring everyone back up to speed with that.
Just getting a real clear direction on what I should be doing. Like I have some good ideas, but I just need a mentor, just like anyone. I just need a coach, just like any pro musician or athlete. They need a coach. That's what I'm looking for. And of course, obviously, moving is a challenge in and of itself. But big picture, I just need some direction and some guidance and some Mark Asquith wisdom.
Hello. We'll do what we can. Cool, man.
All right.
Well, good. Glad to have you back. No, it's good. It's good. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, good to be here.
Looking forward to digging in. So, Marco, I guess we'll dig into the whole connectivity side of things. I'm interested in this whole blog post and getting some attention on those things because, Rick, obviously, you're about to start launching into that. And James, I'm guessing that content and getting some attention on content is something that you'll need some attention on as well.
Definitely.
So, Marco, just bring us up to date on, like, what? Just very quickly, give us the schedule. Like, what's your publishing schedule for the written content now? What are you doing sort of this week, next week? What's that schedule for the written content? And then where's it going? Like, where are you publishing this stuff to?
Yeah, right now we're trying to get out one a week. Like I said, I think we have 6 or 7 in the queue that are written, and I'm going through and editing them, and then every Monday getting one up, posted Monday night. So we're trying to get a like a minimum set out there at least. So there's a few of them already there. Then as far as regular schedule, we may do like a couple a month or something. I think now that Louisa and I talked about what kind of content we want to put on there, she's every day saying, oh, well, there's another blog post, right? Because she's basing it on things that she's experiencing. And like the last one she did on perseverance was pretty, I think, like I said, got a couple comments, not a whole lot, but people did say they thought it really hit the point of things that they've experienced and things that should be done with children as far as perseverance goes. So I think those kind of day-to-day things will probably, get a lot of traction. It seems like people relate to those pretty well. So we want to get these 6 out over the next few weeks, and then try to get on a regular schedule with those. And in the meantime, I'm looking at each one of those subjects and looking at other blogs that are out there and websites that are associated with those subjects, and also like general parenting ones that we think they would be a fit for. And going to start, I'm right now compiling the list of those things, but going to start sending out things like, hey, because some of them just want to see that you already have one, and they just will link to your blog and you post a direct copy of the blog. Other ones want original ones, so we can tweak what we have or whatever. So trying to sort out which ones want what kind of content and start just systematically going through those and try to get that content out to other, as guest blogs on other sites. And also want to put them on LinkedIn once we get Louisa established on there as well. Okay. Cool. The other thing I wanted to mention, we also talked about and then talked to a few people about it. And we actually got one doctor, a different type of doctor on board to do. We want to do a podcast series that kind of goes along with, because the sensory processing stuff seems to be very, gets a lot of traction. People seem to relate to it. And there basically are 7 areas in that subject, and we're doing posts that are associated with each one of those, like Twitter posts as well as Facebook, and trying to get the blog posts to kind of all sync up. Mm-hmm. But we wanted to do a series in each of those areas because each of those are different types of professionals that treat those specific areas. Like we got this visual doctor online. He treats the visual segment of sensory processing for children and adults. And I talked to him last week because my son had an appointment there. He's very interested in we want to do a podcast interview series on each of those areas. So where we'll get a professional in and talk to them about, kind of not only what kind of symptoms parents would see, to identify that they may have an issue there, but also how the professionals help in those areas, what kinds of strategies they use and things like that, so people can get an idea of things they can do, or if it's serious enough that they need to go and see an actual doctor or whatever about them. So he was pretty excited about it, and he's, I guess, done stuff like webinars and things for the Optometrist and Ophthalmologist Association and things like that. So he's pretty familiar with the technology, so it should be pretty easy to start with him anyway to get him on an interview. So we've talked to some other professionals in the other areas and trying to get them on board to do that, so we can post basically probably going to be a 7 or 8 part series of podcasts on sensory processing, but focusing on each of those areas for parents.
Okay, man. I like that.
Trying to sync that up with the blogs and stuff as well.
So that kind of links. It's a really good point, actually. I just want to jump in on the James. You mentioned about becoming the kind of credible expert when it comes to making money from being a musician, basically.
Yep.
And then Rick, obviously, move expert, life uncloseted. It's about becoming that expert, and now you're working with Josh on that kind of messaging side of things and getting that out from a PR side. And Marco, what you're doing there is interesting. I think if you angle that right, you want to be hanging off the tailcoats a little bit to be catching up with that expert status. You want to be dragging on the bottom of this doctor's status to elevate Louisa up there and become a lot more credible. And James, that's actually it leads interestingly to what you said about Trumpet Dynamics. Sorry, about Musicpreneur. And then Rick, what we were talking about on the podcast, like what's the point of the podcast? Like, why are we doing the podcast? Why bother? I'm always a fan of, if you're going to do the interviews, like everyone's interviewing people, like everyone's doing it. And it's great, it's nice. But actually, what you're trying to do is elevate yourself as the expert. So when it comes to sharing these things, when it comes to creating other peripheral content around the audio, let's take the social shares or take the blog posts as an example. Like, what angles can you use to position yourself off the back of that? So, for example, let's say that you do the 8-part series, Marco. You do a big 8-part series or whatever it ends up being. And the doctor's classed as the expert. Actually, what supporting content can you do that shows that the doctor is taking Louisa seriously as the expert parent? Like, what is the supporting content? Because what you don't want to do is be the host and then the expert guest. It's kind of got to be, we've got to even the scales out a little bit around that. So what's the format? What other supporting content can we do? How do we share it on content on social media? What do we do? Do we get this doctor having a testimony about what Louisa's done, as opposed to just sharing a quote from the doctor, which is what most people would do? Like, does it become a testimony from the doctor about Louisa's insights into daily parenthood?
Yeah, that was the idea, is to focus it on, getting input from the doctors, but also getting doctors to concur with some of the strategies that Louisa's come up with for those areas, right? Because she has in the book where she talks about each of those areas in detail. And we want to structure it so that it's not so much she's interviewing him and he dumps all the knowledge out. It's like her saying, in this area, I talk about this in my book or whatever. And these are strategies that I've used with my own kids, and have that discussion kind of go back and forth, like, oh yeah, I agree with that or whatever. So that, it helps build her up as a peer with the doctor, right? Because our pediatrician has pretty much said that he thought of these things were great, and an ABA a therapist who's pretty well known in the area, she's always saying, yeah, you're spot on with this stuff in the book. And when Louisa's always calling her up and saying, hey, I had this going on and this is what I was doing, and she's like, oh yeah, you're doing exactly the right thing. And she says, you hit all the things, even though you don't have a degree or whatever in that particular area. You've nailed each one of those, properly, So it's that kind of interchange that we're trying to get out of this. People who know her and have seen what she's done with our kids and what she's written about, especially, and can concur with those kind of things, and also bring insight into more, how maybe they would treat them more in depth, and what kind of things parents can look for, so that it's helpful to the parents as far as listening and saying, hey, maybe my kid's got this going on. I should talk to somebody, right?
Yeah. And I think that's about accessibility. And again, James and Rick, to apply it to what you guys are doing, what Marco, what you're saying there is that Louise is actually the bridge between the real people and the quote unquote educated expert. They're the people that have gone through college and they've got the degrees and they are the clinicians in that field. Louise is the accessible bridge. James, you're the accessible bridge between the people who are making a living and the people that want to make a living. You are the bridge between them. The challenge then becomes, how do you make money doing that? Like at what level does that credibility tip where you're the one able to make some money from it? And I think, Rick, you're a little bit ahead with that kind of thing. Like you are actually connecting people with themselves, but this version of themselves that they didn't think they'd be able to access. You're giving them that ability to unlock that. And that we've seen that the quick way to make some money doing that is by quick coaching, going through that process, putting some kind of coaching program in place. But also, like, what does it mean to be the expert? So James in particular, like, what do you want to be seen as? Is it the person who knows how to make money from a music career? And is that what you teach? Or is it something else? Is it something that's not quite that? It's just one degree off. So what I'll actually ask you, like, what is that? How do you pitch yourself? What do you tell people you do?
Man, that's something that I'm still identifying, honestly. Like a big challenge that I've had is the host of a podcast that talks about how to make money making music is like my main source of income is not music. And so people are like, well, why should we listen to you? Because, well, I have made money making music, but that's not my focus right now. My focus right now is my podcast. Like, I tell people that my podcast is my instrument. So, when you get right down to it, it's like you have to do the same thing as a musician does. You have to build an audience. You have to have a really strong message around your music, or in my case, my podcast. And so that's definitely something that I have experienced as some resistance from people. It's like, well, you're not doing it, so why should I listen to you?
Well, actually, and just to jump in on that one, I think that's what makes certainly Rick and Marco, and I think if you look at anyone that's usually online, Raf, Andrea, Calm, if you look at all those guys, they are kind of living that thing, but they didn't start like that. They actually realized what thing they were living and then lent into that. So from your side, to apply that, actually, it might not be make all your money from music. It might be that it's all right to not make all your money from music, and it's about the progression to doing that. And then, as you did that, and then you've gone through it and you've changed. So actually, maybe the pitch, and the reason I'm kind of talking about this is that it does link into how you present yourself on the LinkedIn and write the content, because it's a much bigger story as opposed to make all your money doing it. It's actually, do you know what? You probably can't do this in 2 months or 6 months or a year. But what I've learned is that I've been doing it for 20 years and I've come off the back of it. So I've got, this is a lifespan. It's not a 2-second fix. So maybe it's a case of leaning into that. And I think, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something that we've worked on over the last year or so together with Life Uncloseted is actually which bit do we lean into? And you almost don't know until people tell you. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense, because I think the big thing that Mark and I kind of have hit on with my whole brand is the bold move is something that most people can't put their mind around initially, and they want to perceive whatever life uncloseted looks like for them, whether, okay, I've succeeded or I'm living my life my way or whatever it is. They can see that, but they can't get to either one of those things until one other thing happens, which is giving themselves permission to do this. So while the brand are these two other things, everything else is about building them into that space. So even the blog post that I'm working on right now is it's all around those pieces that kind of give you permission to get over your own shit, to realize you're in that space where things just suck. And so I think you can own your brilliance in your brand, and kind of back to what Marco was just talking about. is to find the experts who go, wow, this person does know what they're talking about. They align with a lot of stuff that, you know, we learned in school, but they're coming from a space that is completely different than textbook doing it. So I think that's a lot of what you got to find is that sweet spot.
And that idea with the permission as well. And again, Marco and James and everyone else that's kind of going through this process. Rick's people need permission. Like, that's the thing. They've got to give themselves this pre-validated, it's all right to talk about this with someone. And I think, James, from your side, like what's the thing that people need to overcome to get into your content? Like, what is that missing piece? And it might be the fact that this is not just because you want to make money from being an entrepreneur in music does not mean that it's got to be. It's not a light switch. It's not I make no money from it or I make all my money from it.
Yeah.
It's actually what's that barrier to entry? And then Marco, with your stuff, it's actually, why should we listen to Louisa? Like, what is the deal? And it's because you live in it and you've got the daily life and you can prove that. So it's the content's solid. Like, James, you know your stuff is solid. You know your stuff is solid. Rick knows his stuff is solid. Marco, you know that it's solid. What's the bit before that? And that's what the content really has got to do. You know, we find that here at Podcast Websites and everything else that we're doing. You know, we know the platform does what it says on the tin, but what are the objections? You know, and that again is about, I know we're deviating from LinkedIn a little bit, but the social proof on Twitter, the conversations that you have, it's all about just positioning you as the person that's overcome the objections. It's quite an interesting thing. So, Marco, I'm just going to kind of come back to you on this one. So, strategically speaking, when it comes to creating your content, how are you deciding what idea flies and what doesn't? I think that's Rick, I know you're going through this process, and James, you will be, if not already. But Marco, what decides what makes the cut? How do you?
Well, it's been difficult, but like I said, I've been trying to put different ideas out on Twitter, which has been to me a better gauge than, say, Facebook, as far as different areas. And when I hit certain ones that I see get a lot of impressions, maybe even not a lot of interactions, but they do get some retweets and some likes and some things like that, where the interactions are much higher than, the impressions are much higher than some of the other areas. Those seem like areas that kind of hit, so that we're focusing blogs on those areas that we kind of ping out on Twitter, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like, if we see that there's a interest in it, then we talk about that as kind of our blogs. But the other areas that, when you talked about the living it day to day, I think what Louisa's trying to do now, and we're focusing on, is when she does have something come up during the day, and she goes, "Oh, this would make a good blog post," and she relates it to, this is our everyday life, and this is what I experienced today, but this is what I do about it, right, on an ongoing basis, and this is how I see improvement. So I think that helps build that part of it that you're talking about, whereas we are living this day to day, we go through the same struggles, but this is the way she handled it, right, and why you should do that. And part of some of that stuff relates back to what she wrote about in the book. Other stuff is just, stuff that she does on a daily basis. So we're trying to intermix those kind of off the cuff posts, I guess you call them, like, this is our daily life, in with blogs that we kind of strategically put in there. Like, we're talking about sensory processing, so as things come up during the week that are related to those topics, but it's a real life thing, she writes it down and then she does a blog on it, right? Yeah. So we're trying to keep it so it's focused on those things where we see the traction on places like Twitter and Facebook.
Okay. That makes sense.
We really don't have any other gauge right now as far as a big following or something on emails and things like that to be able to ask those kind of questions, but we see what people are reacting to more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to pick up on the whole repurposing thing as well, because I think that's an important thread to keep up from last week and the week before. You won't have known this, James, actually. So a couple of weeks ago, I started publishing out all my podcast stuff. I'm writing a blog post every single day. The blog post goes out 5 times a week that accompanies the podcast episode, whatever it is. It's not show notes. It's a separate, standalone blog piece. Just starting to get a little bit of traction on that, actually. Seeing some big spikes in downloads on the podcast. and seen a little bit of, like Andrea told me, I was featured on Medium's front page. I didn't even know that, not a clue how that happened, but it was just a thing that happened. So I know what you two guys are doing, James, Marco and Rick. James, is there anything that you're doing around this kind of repurposing side of things? Is there anything where you're taking the audio content and doing anything different with it?
Something that I've been doing is like my audio blogs that I do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is I'll just first what I did today is, and I'm about to record it, is I wrote an email based on just a little experience that I had this past weekend that I can turn into an entrepreneurial message, and just write the email and then just record, basically read the email sort of in a conversational tone. So it's a podcast episode and an email that's sent out to my list. So that's a little bit of what I do with repurposing.
That sounds good. I like that idea. And one thing I'm interested in is doing a little bit more to spread the word publicly as well. I think we all want more reach. We all want more audience. Something that I'm going to tell you guys. Are you doing anything? Are you doing anything on Medium, Rick, Marco, and James? Are you doing anything much on Medium?
No.
That does seem to be. Let me just find the thing that I'm thinking of. I cannot find it. Can't remember the name of it. Seems to be a worthwhile place to put stuff. And what we're doing, let me just find it. Let me send you a link. I'm going to send you guys a link in the Slack channel, in the Mastermind Slack channel. Okay. Right, I've just sent you that. Have a quick look. If you're on a computer, just click on the link and bring the Medium post up. What you'll see.
So where are these blog posts showing up when you're writing them on the daily basis?
I'll tell you that in a sec. So have you got that up? Have you got the Medium post up? Right.
I'm sorry, where is it?
It's just in Slack. You might not be in the channel. Sorry, James.
No, I'm on the channel.
You might not be in the new Mastermind channel.
Oh, okay. This is the old one, I guess.
You've got, we do have the old one we use, but this one's just for any resources that we need on the Mastermind. So there you go. Just put you in that one.
All right.
There you go. So what happens, Rick, is that we take the blog post, so we take the audio content, write a blog post around it. And it goes onto the website, the Excellent Expected site, goes onto Medium, goes onto Quora, goes onto LinkedIn. There's the full, complete.
Well, that's why I'm asking, because when I go to the website, I go to blogs, I don't see that blog post. So
no,
am I missing something?
It's not on as a blog, and the reason is it's on as, if you go on the 7 Minute Mentor podcast, it's under there. So it acts as the complimentary show notes on my website. And everywhere else, it's a standalone blog post. So it's not intended to be a separate blog post on my website. It's intended to support the audio. The reason for that is that it gets pushed out. What I'm trying to do is increase the listeners to the show. So what I'm doing is sending it out to these big outlets, but without the audio, so that it drags people back through into my channel. Because what I want to do is get them listening to the show, then somehow get them on the email list. Like, that's the big play with it. But if you scroll down, I found this really good service called Upscribe. Scroll about halfway down the Medium post. You'll see there's an email form embedded into it. So and the service that I use for that is this one, which is actually proven to be really quite effective. And it's like an embed. So you just copy the link and paste it into Medium. So the reason that I mentioned that is that basically Medium, you've got a shit ton of free publicity, like so many people on there. And you can now embed email forms onto it. Like it's almost ridiculous not to do it.
Wow. So you publish a blog post and then you just embed this into the post and put it
Yeah.
on Medium? Or
And the great thing is, Medium's that smart. It's an all embed link. So what that means is like normally you need like a big embed code, don't you? It's like iframe this and iframe that, and it's this big code. You don't need that on this. It's just one link. So you paste the link into the content, hit return, and it gets the form. It's so simple to integrate into your schedule.
wow.
Like it's almost a big mistake to not be publishing the same content out to Medium, I think. So Rick, in your example, you'd publish your big cornerstone post, get it on Medium, but you'd have 2 or 3 of these things in there. Interestingly, what you could then do is you could say, you know what, on Life Uncloseted on my Thursday rant, I talk about this and put a link in there and link it over to the particular, because what we want to do is pull people from this place in to our little ecosystem. So like I said, I don't know what the results will be, but it's definitely so far proving to it's certainly seeming like it's doing some good. If we look over the stats.
So Mark, you said you're writing a not a blog that you're posting on your blog segment of your website, but it's something related to the podcast that talks about the same subject, but then basically you're referring back to the podcast if people want to listen to the whole story, right?
You got it, yeah. So if you look at the post, it's the same content as what's in the podcast, and it links to other bits of content as well. So it will link to a blog post that I've written or another episode. It'll link, and then there's always one sentence about 3 paragraphs in, which is, oh, by the way, I talk about this same subject on the podcast, and it links into the podcast.
But is it the same? It's not the same content, but it's the same subject, right?
Same subject, and it's kind of paraphrasing the content or taking it from a different angle or looking at it from a little bit of a different perspective.
Okay.
And we do some interlinking as well. So this is dealt with on episode 4 or 5. But because I'm telling a bit of a story, we'll link to 404. We might link to 406. So we'll start to interplay in a little bit. The idea is to build a little bit of loyalty, people coming back.
So, because just going back to what I was talking about with these interview type podcasts, we were planning to write a blog about each of those areas and say, hey, check out the podcast that talks about this more in depth with this expert, right? And would that be something that you would post there, or would it be something different than the blog?
I think that there's an opportunity with interview. I think a lot of podcasters don't take this interview format and maximize what comes out of it. You think about it, like how many really good quotes do you get from like a 40-minute interview? You get what? At least 5. You get at least 5 solid quotes. Each one of those you can just recraft into a Medium article. So this one quote, like why does it stand out? What's the concept behind it? And to draft a 700-word article or a 1,000-word article, it really doesn't take that long. And you just put that together and blast it out to Quora and to Medium, and then suddenly you, like we talked about, bringing it back in, you become an expert on this thing because you're using that one expert's knowledge and you're giving your opinion around it, So it's a really useful thing to do.
Hey, Mark, I'm sorry Mark, can I interrupt? Did you say a 40-minute interview?
Yeah, whatever. However long your interviews are.
Okay, like 30 or 40?
Yeah, if you get.
Because I thought you said 4.
Oh, not a 4-minute interview. That'd be boring.
All right.
But like with ultimately, we're writing these blog posts based on pretty much 4.5 minutes of my content. There's a little bit of pre-roll and a little bit of ad stuff in there. We are getting 1,000 words out of it. So if you were to take a 40-minute interview and take 5 quotes from it, you have got 5 blog posts there. I'm sure there's 5 blog posts.
What if you were to make like 5 podcast episodes, like Mark Asquith Part 1, Mark Asquith Part 2?
Well, the problem that I've got with that is that doesn't remember the goal of this. The outcome that you want is to position you as the expert. For you to be the expert, you've got to have an opinion. So rather than taking me as the content and putting it 5 ways, it's about you having the opinion on what I've said as the expert, as the perceived expert. Because you want to be peer-to-peer as opposed to that person says. You've got to be peer-to-peer with that person. So if you can say, do you know what, Mark said this, and even though I thought it was a great point, actually I disagree. Or actually, I agree, but let's think about it from this perspective. So you suddenly become relevant on the same level. You know, it's like, Rick, if you were to interview let's say Chris Gilbo, let's look at, you know, Chris is the example. If you were to give an opinion on Chris's opinion, you would be seen as someone at the same level in the eyes of the person reading that, because you've chanced, you've gone under the hammer and said, actually, I'm willing to put myself out there and say, this is what I think. Even if people disagree, I'm going to put myself on the line. And that's what an expert does, you know? So I think it's kind of low.
So here's a good example of it. It's kind of interesting that you brought this up, Mark, because I interviewed a guy who, his name is Dan McDaniel. He just happens to be another World Domination Summit person, but he's done some amazing stuff about getting goals done. So he wrote his first book and published it while living out of his car. He met Oprah, which actually wasn't a big deal because he actually paid so he could meet her. But he's actually been on the Suze Orman show on her TV show. And so all his goal stuff has been about, you know, how do you make your goals happen? And in the midst of the interview, and I know I've heard this quote from somewhere else, but he said the quote, he goes, do the hard things in life and life will be easy. Do the easy things in life and life will be hard. Well, I'm actually going to take that quote and use it as part of the promo for the podcast. It'll be right on the, right on the art that goes out on Instagram and everything else. But I'm actually going to use it as a rant and riff now, because I kind of agree, but I kind of disagree with that quote. You know, do the hard stuff and then life will be easy. Well, that can be true in certain situations, but sometimes the hard stuff isn't going to make life easier until you realize now that it's done. So here's where I bring it in. Now that you've done that hard thing, which is the bold move of coming out of the closet or starting your own business or walking away, life isn't going to immediately be easy, but the end result is going to be easier because you're no longer battling the thing that you were trying to fight. Yeah. And finally step into it. So now I can take and riff on that, and I can also do a quick blog post on that as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, man. And you're taking each concept and digging a bit deeper into it. That's actually pretty much how I build my entire content, is that I'll do one big ass blog post every single month, and then I get 23 or 24 pieces of audio content off the back of that one, whatever, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 word blog post. And I dig into it, just one throwaway little comment. I'll dig into it on a 7-Minute Mentor show, but then that spins out a separate blog post just about that thing. So you kind of, I don't think any of us are maxing out on the content. I think we're always looking at the next thing, but to position ourselves as the expert, we've just got to have an opinion on something. So like Louisa and Marco, you've got to have an opinion on just the daily life of building a family, of living the life, of bringing up sensitive, high-needs kids. You've got to just live that life. James, you've got to have an opinion on how to make money as a musician, whether it's all or nothing, or some money, or actually what's the angle, But just one tiny throwaway sentence can give you Rick's rant and riff, which in turn could then be another blog post. And I feel like we're just not maxing out on that, because that then becomes the shareable. It becomes the discussion on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. It becomes a Facebook Live that you can then talk about. There's shit tons of stuff. So I think it's just one of those things where, rather than kind of be on that hamster wheel a little bit, you want to build the reach up. That's all we're all trying to do, is build reach, build audience. So really kind of bleed everything you can out of every single tiny concept. I think it's important. So go on, Marco, you're going to say something there, sir?
I was going to say, because I think that last post that Louisa did on perseverance was definitely her take and her her opinion. And I think a lot of these off the cuff ones are more that focused. Like, her opinion in that was that, nowadays we tend to want to, I guess, help our kids so much to make life good for them that we sometimes overlook helping them build these skills of perseverance, right? So her opinion was pretty much, you need to do that, even though you want to do the best for your kids. You want them to have a good life. If you're not building that skill in them, you're doing them a disservice, right? And I think that's why she got a couple comments back, people saying, yeah, I agree with that, because a lot of kids don't get that instilled in them, and then they come out of college and they're into their life and they don't know what it means to work for something, right? Because a lot of things were given to them as they were growing up instead of them learning that they need to work for things and work through things. And she gave a lot of examples of people throughout history and all the great things that happened only because they persevered, like Edison and Ford and all these people who just, they failed 10 times. They went bankrupt 3 or 4 times, but then look where Disney is today, right? Because of Walt Disney, and look where Ford is and all these companies and how that needs to be instilled. So I think, like you said, kind of the opinion part of it helps drive people. Either they're going to agree with you or they're not, and they're going to comment one way or the other. So
yeah,
I think it helps. I
agree totally. And I think you almost want to divide people a little bit as well. You want to go a little bit contrarian sometimes with that. Sorry, Rick, were you going to say something?
Well, no, and Marco, I'll send you the link to it, but I did a rant and riff just recently on something around parenting, because I was at a wine tasting event, and this father showed up. He had 3 young boys with him, and there was a food truck with tacos. So they got their tacos, and they sat right across the table, or the next table over from us. And there were beef tacos, there were chicken tacos, there was fish tacos, I don't know. And one of the little boys said, "I don't like this." And the other one said, "Hey, Dad, can I trade your steak tacos for my chicken tacos?" And the dad said, "So what have you learned about this? Get chicken, play it safe." And I was just like, he just did a blueprint on those kids right there. I mean, that wasn't exactly how I said it. I think it was more, play it safe, eat chicken. And so I did a whole rant and riff on this, because it's like, here's how you just imprint it on those boys to don't take any risks, always play it safe. And it was just happened to be something I was sitting there listening to, and I came home and I immediately recorded that rant and riff, because I thought this fits so well with my brand about how people don't take bold moves and don't take risks.
Yeah, that's cool. So the rant and riffs, you just do a short audio, is it, or video?
Yep, they're every Friday. And that may actually, we're considering that's a high probability what my podcast is going to turn into, is just little short segments again, because I'm 300 shows in August, and I'm kind of like done with the interview. So
yeah. Like it, man. The short content seems to be working well.
Yeah, for everybody.
Yeah, everyone seems to be doing it. I'm going to go a little bit more long form with mine again, I think. I'm going to keep doing the short one and just add a little bit more longer form stuff in as well. But it's good. It's good. Cool. Right. Well, we're going to wrap it in a couple of minutes. Top of the hour as normal. So any quick thoughts, any quick questions that anyone needs to overcome? Any problems anyone's having? No? All right, cool. James, you and I are speaking on Wednesday, I do believe. Let's just double check. No, tomorrow. Sorry, my bad. 11 a.m. Eastern, so we're all good. That'll be on the same Zoom as this one, and we're all good. So, Rick, pop us through some thoughts on what happened with Josh.
I will.
And let you know what's happening with that.
I've got a busy day. I've got 4 podcasts I'm recording today, but I'll get it in between those. So.
Okay, man, that's good. Well played. And Marco, keep us posted on what's happening with. I'm interested in what's happening with the doctor that we talked about last time. That's one thing I want to try and keep a little bit on the boil. So if you can let us have a bit of an update on that in Slack, that'd be really good, please.
Okay.
Sweet. Cool. All right, guys. Well, good chat. Always good to see everyone. Cam, Andrea, and Raf will be back around next week, I think. So we'll be rocking and rolling, and we'll all chat separately from there.
Thanks, Mark.
Pleasure, guys.
Yeah, nice seeing everyone. Have a good week.